Does everybody have an agenda? Okay. You want one? Yeah, that's it. Yes. Short and sweet. My name is Laura South, and I work with Emergency Strategy doing public involvement to help keep you informed of what's going on. And we're here to talk about the Lake Worth Neighborhood Road Program. As you all know, I'm sure the bond was passed late last year for this great project, and we're very excited about all the capital improvements that are going to be made. You can see some of this is the whole project here, and then this is your district, District 4. So the purpose is to keep you informed and to get your input. We especially want your feedback on different aspects of the project, make sure that we know if you've got any concerns or if there is something that works better one way or the other. We'd like to get your input on that. Through these meetings, through the website, which is at the bottom of this agenda. There's also a Twitter address down there and the hotline, and also through the door hangers, which hopefully you all got a door hanger. We will keep you informed about these meetings or anything like that that's going on, and then of course the website will keep you up to date on what's going on. We have from WGI, we have Mr. Richard Haskell back here and Jennifer Hofmeister in the back corner, which they will be here to answer any questions you might have or help with that. We also, let's see, I don't think we have anyone from the city here. And you will be meeting, this is Teresa Chapman from Chenmore, and you'll be meeting Brent Whitfield in just a moment here. So I think at this point, Brent will come up and tell you all about the project and the information. We have our commissioner here, Scott Maxwell.
Hi. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for being here.
Good evening, everybody.
A test?
No.
Oh, okay.
As Ms. South said, Brent Whitfield, I'm with Chenmore Associates, and we're the engineer for District 4. The bond program, they split the city into 4 quadrants, of the district quadrants, and each one has a consultant, engineering consultant, that's going to be handling all of the design and effort. It's a 4-year program. So on the map we have up here, it's color-coded, and there's some different repairs being done in different years. So this map is really for year 1. So we're in year 1 right now. We're doing the design effort on year 1. I'd like to make a distinction. I think if I took a show of hands of anyone in the city, the worst street in the city, 2nd Avenue South, is not on this map, you'll notice, but that's because the city has already gone underway. Thank you, Vice Mayor. CDBG fund money was put in towards that project prior to the bond, so whether or not the bond had happened, at least 2nd Avenue was going to be addressed. But all of these streets, year 1, are going to be addressed. We have them split into blue and red here because blue are the streets that we're trying to roll out as quickly as possible. So we kind of bit off a big chunk to get all of these roads done in the first year. We wanted to be able to spread some of the construction effort across the year 1 effort. And so what we did was, the blue streets here are ones that we're designing right now. We've gotten all our survey. We've collected pavement cores. We've got some geotechnical information, some speed studies. I'll talk a little bit about that. But all that information is such, we're going to try to mobilize construction on the streets you have shown in blue July, August, so late summer. The end of June, we'll have the designs complete for the blue streets. The designs will go to commission for approval with contractors, and then the contractors who are already on board with the city, they've selected a pool of, I believe it's 5 contractors, right? Mr. Jamie Brown, who's just in here, Public Works, Public Services. So the 5 contractors are a pool that they have already under contract to pick from. They should be able to do what we call push button roll with these designs as soon as we have it. So we're trying to make sure we start using that $40 million to get these streets fixed up as soon as we can. So the blue streets, what we've done so far is we took pavement cores. So this is a pavement core. You might see if you're out there on the streets about twice a block, there's a little circle and an X painted on in white with a number, C, in this case 13, and they run a saw that cuts a core and pulls it out. And so why is that important? Because from street to street, as you might expect, there's a lot of variation in what there is there. And so how we're going to repair that street, a lot depends on what we see in the pavement core. Like in this case, you can see the crack goes all the way through the core. I don't know if you can see that in the back, but a crack goes all the way through the core. So one of the repair techniques that we might typically do is called a mill and overlay, if you guys have seen. So this grinding machine grinds like the top inch off of the asphalt, and then we come back and we put another inch on, or inch and a half off the top, and we put 3/4 of an inch down and then another 3/4 of an inch. So that is actually a good repair approach for something like this, where you have a real thick pavement section and maybe you don't have cracking running through it, but just raveling. And in cases where there's a pothole, we might do a patch to clean that up, but that inch and a half down, inch and a half put back is the way that DOT, all kinds of folks commonly fix roads. In this case, if we did that, that crack at the bottom will show back up again. They call it a reflective crack. It'll come back through because we put a nice layer on top, and then this moves around as cars drive over it, the crack reflects through. So we want to be able to look at these different cases and say, what kind of repair do we need to make? This is an example I was mentioning to some of the folks who got there earlier. This is M Street and 8th, just south of South Grade Elementary. And if you've been there, there's a lot of potholes. One reason is because there's not very much asphalt at that location. So when we were just out there with Felipe, the assistant to Jamie in the Public Services group. In that case, when we mill that asphalt, we're going to end up just looking at the bare base, lime rock base, bare white rock. What we're going to end up doing in that case is kind of reworking that, proof rolling it, tack, and then paving. So the city, although you might not believe it, has what they call a typical section, what a road's supposed to look like, for a 40-foot right-of-way and a 60-foot right-of-way. So the difference in this case is the sidewalk's right up against the street on either side. The 60-foot, you might have a sidewalk, then a swale, and the street, swale, sidewalk. Now here you see 13-foot wide on, say, northbound and southbound lane, or eastbound and westbound lane. If you go out into the city, that's not always the case. There's some locations where there's actually one we're looking at 11th Avenue South, where the full width of the paved road is 13 feet. It's really only one travel lane. It tightens down. So, but then there's cases in that location where, as we widen it, what do we run into? So what we're going to try to do is reach this typical section objective without running into a problem with maybe a power pole or a utility that is a concern, or maybe there's a resident facility or something there. We're going to have to work with that person. Another thing you'll notice on these is you've got a sidewalk on each side. Where we can, we're going to try to have a sidewalk on each side. If that doesn't work, we're going to at least have a sidewalk continuous on that block on one side. Because if you don't have, you got to have at least a sidewalk on one side so that you can get from one end of the street to the other for ADA accessibility. There is also what you see here, this type F curb and gutter. So if you look at some of the newer streets the city's done, you'll see a concrete gutter between the sidewalk and the black asphalt pavement. So in many cases here in the city, what they've done for a repair is done a thin overlay. So they don't, in past administrations and in past years prior to the staff we have now, they would just throw an overlay across this whole thing. And that's, you see that reflected crack again, you have concerns, and that pavement is also overlaid on top of the concrete gutter. And if you look out there, you'll see a crack pattern that follows what that concrete gutter looks like. And then you get little grass growing, all kind of stuff. We want to clean that up. This improves the drainage. You get your concrete gutter, again, it helps with the drainage of flow of water when it runs off the cross slope of the road, down the gutter into a drainage inlet. So this is kind of what we're going to try to do in each and every case. We've completed our surveys. We've completed, like I said, the geotech, and I have with me today a 50% set of drawings for all this streets you see in blue. So we're still working through some details. We're about half. We do all of the streets a rough cut 50%. and then we dig a little deeper and see what we find. So I'd like, if you have a specific question about a specific location at your street, or maybe there's a puddle or ponding that always forms at the end of your driveway, maybe you have a specific concern with the roadway, we'll pull it up and I'd like to mark it on here after we're done with the meeting. I'll stay however long and we'll work through any and every question you guys might have. But another thing I'd like to talk about, and one of the reasons we're here, is while we're doing this, we want to look at other questions and concerns. Traffic calming is something we can do while we're taking up the street. So we did a speed study, which is, you see the little rubber tubes out in the street, and we see how many cars go by, how fast they go. We did 2 north-south streets, I think it was J and K, and 2 east-west streets, I think it was 12th and 8th. Yeah, J and K, 12th and 8th, to see what the average speeds were over a 5-day period. And they pretty much were right around 25 to 27 miles per hour was the average speed. So you can look through. I know it's
you're looking at the wrong street.
That's
not at all.
Ocean Breeze, they had a speed sign from the sheriff's department for Palm Beach Sheriff came to town.
Yeah.
Every speed down Ocean Breeze was 60 miles an hour from
Really?
2nd Street to 5th.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't know where you're getting this information.
Well, I trust that this information for these 5 days for these 4 streets. But I'm not saying that there isn't people speeding. I'm not disagreeing with you. And I'm not saying that we're at all trying, I don't care what this thing says, we're open to putting in speed humps, bulb outs, whatever kind of things you think. That's one of the reasons we're here, to get your input. As I know, circled in our scope and contract, we have a meeting at this point and another one at 90%, so it'll be in late June, I think the 29th, to show you that we've taken your input and put it into our plans. And we're here to take in input like, do something on our street for traffic calming, and we'll do that. I mean, that's the intention. But I just wanted to let you know we do have some data, and you're welcome to go through and look at each day where it's got a grid of how many cars were going at what speeds and what have you. But anyway, just to let you know.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I know, like when you're talking about the cracking on the asphalt, what about when you have, like, for years they were just like doing that film across?
Yeah, the microsurface.
And what happens is that you start to build up, and then manholes are going down lower.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're hitting those become your potholes, which means that you're also damaging all the asphalt around it,
Mm-hmm.
creating the cracks, which can be like fissures all the way through.
Right.
Is there anything that can be done to backtrack to get those so they're level?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely we want to make sure. So we have a surveyor that went out and took shots at all these locations and on the top of the manholes, and we want to make sure that the grades of the road come to an even surface. Right. But a lot of this stuff where the kind of rubber meets the road is during the construction effort. So we're going to have a staff person from our office that's out there full time, representing the city and making sure that the contractor is working these details out. So probably what will happen in most repairs is they'll put down a leveling cord. So we'll kind of tear up the street, fix where you might have a pothole that's 4 inches deep, fix that up with the rock, clean it up, roll it, whatever. Put in a leveling course to kind of iron out all the details, but it'll still be maybe an inch short of where the match with the sidewalks are. You might see it if you're driving down a street that's in the middle of construction. They'll have like temporary striping, and the pavement just seems lower than all the manholes and the water valves and everything. And then that final course, so it's 2 layers of asphalt, that final layer of asphalt should be such that everything matches in.
How about when the manholes are much lower than the street?
Right, so we should be able to, there's 2 options. Either the street is too high, or you can adjust the manhole up so that it matches. Yeah. So like a water valve is really easy. The water valves, it's actually threaded, the whole housing. So you just can turn it and raise it up. But then a manhole, we may have to brick it up, change it. We've already looked at, there's some really weird situations, as you might expect. There's an old inlet grate for a drainage on the side of K Street, just south of 3rd, and somebody reconstructed the concrete sidewalk, and it comes over the top of the grade. So you're never getting that grade up. The grade's so small, it's probably from 1925, you know, one dump of leaves and it's clogged.
Yeah,
so, you know, we talked with Jamie and Felipe with the city. What we're going to do is break that top out, and hopefully, I mean, in most cases, although I don't know what it was in 1925, you've got a manhole structure, and then you have a concrete lid, or it's bricked up from there to the grate that you see on the surface. So we can tear down that brick or that concrete lid and replace that and bring it up to the level that we call in the plans. So our plans are going to call elevations to the 1/10 of a foot to try to make sure that that stuff gets adjusted correctly. But I mean, I'd be lying if I said, you know, we're going to try to get all these streets done by June 30th with the plans and everything to a 1/10 of a foot. We may miss something. That's why we have a guy in the field working day to day with the contractor and saying, hey, they've got it listed at 10.1. I can tell this is going to be too low or this is going to be too high. Let's pull this down. You know, Jamie and Felipe, I've worked with them for many years. They're very responsive. We'll be in communication with them. Dick, working with the city on this project, Dick Haskell, we'll be working out those details as we go in the field. So,
I would
disbelieving.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So you're only going to take down 1 inch of asphalt by grinding it down.
So that's not in every case.
Why don't you take it all out, put lime rock down, put the main base down where the road won't deteriorate?
Yeah, I think that's a great...
I mean, that's the proper way to build a road.
No, I really appreciate you bringing this up.
Because I've done this type of excavating.
Okay. I really appreciate you bringing this up because one thing that I didn't mention yet, which
This is a half-ass job.
well,
And this is going to fail. This will fail within 10
okay.
years.
I was going to bring that up with the manhole covers because most of the reasons there's potholes by the manhole covers.
The pipes are collapsing.
Yes, the pipes are
Okay.
collapsing and
That's
they're
what it
leaking,
is.
and you will always have that happen no matter
So
what
I
you
know...
do.
The inspector never went down inside the manhole, look at the pipes, never did, right?
So I do know the city has been TVing lines. So Judy Love, I believe is her name with the city. She's been TVing lines, and we've gotten reports on some of the streets we're on. So in our case, year one of the reasons we have all these selected is we're only doing things basically on the surface. We're doing the top 8 inches, pavement, whatever. Year 2, 3, and 4 is where there's underground work to be done. Now on 2nd Avenue South, they've reported that some of the pipe joints are separating, and like you said, that's part of the problem. I know, I see it. I live in Lake Worth.
That is if you look at every manhole cover and look laterally each way, that's the way the potholes go.
I will say that there are definitely locations in the city where
So
the pothole is for a different reason.
What you need to do is start from base, rip out all the asphalt out,
I hear you, yeah.
redo the drainage underground, and work up. And do it right the first time. This is called a waste of time, wasting a hell of a lot of money, and this town will be a dump.
So if you let me describe the 2nd Avenue South case, and there's another one at 4th. We've got the lines have been TV'd, and we've seen that the drainage pipes have separated, where the male and female ends are seated, have separated. The fine material, the sand, the subgrade is leaking in there when it washes through, and then you start to see the subsidence in the road, crack patterns and things like that, just like you're describing. And what we've talked about with the city is they're going to put a cured in place fabric sleeve, and then it's going to be injected with fiberglass. I'm thinking it's like an acrylic fiberglass material. Anyway, it's a cured in place sleeve inside, and that does resolve the concern. It does. I mean, that's something that they do, honestly, in the town of Palm Beach, which is another place we work, which would not be described as a complete dump.
I don't think they have clay drain lines in the town of Palm Beach.
They don't.
No,
Like
but
they do here.
They do use
water line.
They do use cured in place treatments for lines that are separating like that. In cases where the lines collapsed, what we've been talking about on 4th, that's something that we have to do an excavation and do a replacement. And there are locations in the city, 15th South, that we have a collapsed concrete drainage line. that we're going to do a full excavation and replacement. There are locations on K Street and M Street where we're going to dig up the base. K Street has actually a concrete base.
It has cobblestone underneath the asphalt.
Actually, that's exactly what we found. 4.5 inches of concrete under the asphalt. And if you see the potholes there, it's just a chunk of asphalt missing, and then there's a rock, just solid concrete rock with sand collecting in it. And so we've been talking about, our bond program didn't plan for this, but we're going to have to rip that whole thing out like you're describing, 6-8 inches down, put in the new lime rock base, and put in the asphalt. We sent that, just this week, we sent out the core, the concrete core, to a lab to test to see if we can break it up and maybe find a way to reuse that material. But if we can't, we'll just send it all to the dump and then basically replace everything from scratch.
Now I have a question. In that particular circumstance on K Street, and this is me thinking ahead, kind of like you're saying, if you're going to rip that street out, because you obviously have to,
right?
Would it make sense to replace the drain line and everything down there at the same time, so you don't have to go back and do it again in 6 months or 6 years?
They do patch jobs.
Yeah,
they know how. They know
it's their way of making speed bumps.
They know how to do real construction work.
I completely.
Speed bumps.
I've lived here for 13 years. I completely agree with your sentiment. There are, I don't know, 80.
I did 18th Avenue.
Okay.
I did that whole road. Underground utilities, asphalt sidewalks.
Right. There are, I would guess, 80 miles of streets in the city, which has 100 miles of streets, give or take, that were improperly maintained. That they slapped a microsurface layer on top, and a year later, you've already started to see it fall apart. I mean, it's throughout the city. I'm not disagreeing with you. But I will say, if you try to this $40 million is going to do 30 miles of road, not excavating all the streets. If you excavated all the streets, that's 30 out of 100 miles. If you excavated all the streets, you're talking about maybe 10 miles. You're only addressing 10% of the streets in the city. I think, as a resident, as a taxpayer, if we tried to rebuild every street that we touched with our $40 million, we would not get enough done to drive around the city and feel proud of where we live. I honestly believe that. I think there are streets that are on this map that we can get away with a minor version of the repair, like the mill and overlay. And then there are streets like J and K where we have to spend more than we planned because we have to rip it completely out. The sidewalk is garbage, the curb and gutter is garbage, the street is garbage. And basically from the second that path from the front door hits the public right-of-way to the other side, it's all going to get torn up in July or August and completely replaced.
Which parts of K Street?
Definitely, I really think it might be from 3rd all the way to 6th, this whole segment.
Yeah.
And in year 2 or 3, when we pick up, it'll come up through from 3rd to 1st. But that's not on year 1 because the water main under the street is also a concern.
Have frequency of speed bumps been determined for that?
No, and that's why we're here. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me how many people walk in the street writing down notes about just looking at physical features. How many people complained about the speed of traffic on K? Because there's so many potholes.
It's the main thoroughfare.
There's so many potholes on K. I can't imagine driving fast.
It's the main thoroughfare in the center of downtown.
Yeah, sure.
I saw something on the West Coast. The town did not have too much money, but through Benevola they made the pavers, and there are people making them and people to lay them down. And if the city gets together and you put pavers, do you realize that you can remove the pavers, do you put back the pavers?
Yeah.
And it will fix your speed problem at the same time.
You know, I think
because on pavers you don't go fast. It takes only one
I understand there's a lot of different ways to look at solving a problem like this. The city of Lake Worth, the intention is they have a typical section and they have a typical set of standards, and they want to use that so that all the streets in the city are basically
uniform. Well, a town of little cakes. You want to bring the historical look to it. If you go with the pavers, when you have to redo the street with the pipe, you do aesthetic, you do long term. It's like, and if you can get people involved, because there's a lot of people out there who are not working, you don't know. It'd be a communal project.
Okay. I understand. I know that the city, the approach they want to take is to have one typical standard, and I think that also helps.
Asphalt. You're talking about
right. Asphalt.
Standard.
Right, and I think also, you know, that's the approach that you see in all the cities around here, and
but
you know,
as there are variance favors, and you go to the other communities, and if they want to be a little bit distinct, they use different materials.
I think that pavers can be costly, more costly. I think that although it can be distinctive, sometimes it's not necessarily good to have something that's different because maybe they discontinue the material that you used that year. 10 years later, you got a different color, you got a different look, you're using something different. I think it's best to have a standard that's consistent, not just in the city of Lake Worth, but with the DOT and other cities all around the county, and to stick with that standard and maintain that standard. I think, you know, if you're looking at, you know, some distinctive corridor where the city maybe wanted to pour a lot of money into a pedestrian feature, some downtown objects, you see something like that. But I think what we have is a problem that is not where we want to put a lot of money on a specific look. We want to cover as much problem areas as we can with the $40 million that we have. And I swear to you, the city has been very clear when we ask, how do you want to approach kind of edge issues? Well, this curb and gutter is probably not in terrible shape and could maybe be extended, the life of it. They say, do it once, do it right. We get to this street, we want to fix it, and we don't want to come back to it because these other streets are going to look really bad maybe 10 or 15 years from now if they don't already. They just didn't make the cut for the bond program, and they want to be focusing non-bond money, their annual budget money, on fixing other streets. They don't want to have to ever come back to Jay for anything more than a routine maintenance.
I have two questions real quick. The first one is you're going to, over 4 years, fix these streets. Mm-hmm. And the one thing Lake Worth never had was somebody who knew how to maintain a street. So are you guys going to hire somebody or sublet out a maintenance contract for the streets to properly patch them or cut it out or paint, whatever needs to be done?
So I definitely agree that I think there's been
the gold patch you buy at Home Depot you guys put out is not the answer.
Yeah, it's total garbage. I agree with you. I totally agree. There's two things. I think that I guess it was 5 years ago or so, their budget was so pathetic that was one reason they weren't doing it. And I also agree with you. Again, I've lived here for 13 years. There was some pretty poor staffing in the past. I know I've seen a lot of good patches, as patches go, showing up more in the city.
I mean, I know there's
recent years.
two road construction companies that are in Lake Worth. Mm-hmm. And tried to get the contract to do it, and you guys just don't want to maintain the roads.
To do the
maintenance of them.
Okay. Well, they do have in-house staff to do maintenance, but the five contractors that were just selected, they had, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 contractors.
12 total.
12 contractors submitted a list of prices on all kinds of different items. So curb and gutter, sidewalk, mill and overlay, full depth reconstruction, whatever. And then they picked 5 of those that gave the best price.
Oh no, I meant maintenance.
For annual maintenance.
That's
purposes.
what I meant. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this 5 is for this work. So every time there's just a roadway work, they'll pull from those 5. As far as annual maintenance is concerned, I believe they use city staff. And Jamie can maybe speak to this.
Yeah, Jamie Brown, Public Services Director. Real quick, we're going with that. Not having these in place is why the city is currently where it is as far as the roads are concerned. Before, I got here in July of 2011. When I got here, there were no standards in place, engineering design standards. There were no policy procedure manual. There was nothing that you would find in a typical city. So that's why you see all of these different roadways with different base sections, different thicknesses, different microsurfacing all over. Everything was done incorrect. I'm not going to say stuff was done correctly. It wasn't. And then you had staff that didn't really understand what was going on back then too. So when the contractors were doing the work, no one was out there actually inspecting it, making sure it was done properly. So none of this was going on. So what we're trying to do now is standardize everything. So everything we're putting in now is actually going to be correct. And I don't know if we mentioned, I was running from another meeting here, so I was a little bit late. But did you mention in the beginning of the meeting the two different types of projects that we were?
So like the push button asphalt and the like underground.
The actual underground, okay.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, there were a couple of questions I was here popping up about that, about the different ways that we are actually, the methods we're using. The cores that he's talking about, we're only doing the push button stuff on roads where the cores are actually proper, where we can actually do that kind of work. Where we're doing utility work, it's like you said, we're doing a complete tear up. There's no way to just kind of go in and do the cheap way, or I think you said half-ass. There's no way to do that when we're doing all the underground utility work. So the roads that we're choosing to do this on, the roads we actually can do mill and resurface on.
I mean, have you ever seen City of Palm Beach downtown, how they do their roads?
Absolutely, I know everyone up
there. They tear right down to the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put their utilities in first. Then they put the lime rock down. They grade it, they compact it. Then they put the asphalt on. They do everything right the first time.
And that's what we're doing.
Whenever they want to do.
That's what we're doing on those projects where you have underground utilities. Town of Palm Beach, I know for a fact, because I know all the guys that work up there, they mill and resurface the roads when they're not touching utilities, underground utilities, there's no water, no sewer, no storm. There's no need to waste the money to rip out all that lime rock, which is where a lot of your cost comes from, just to put it right back down again, compact it, and then put 2 layers of asphalt on it. When you can mill and resurface, that's where you get the best bang for your buck. So on those roads, we're not going to, rip out stuff we don't have to. We only have $40 million, and that sounds like a lot, but when you look at a lot of roads,
I guarantee this $40 million is not going to go on all these roads. They'll end up spending the money somewhere else.
Like, what do you mean?
I don't think you're allowed to. I think it's fine. Just for the road.
Somewhere else, as in other roads, or as in we're going to build like a Taj Mahal City Hall somewhere? Because the bond language it's very restrictive, and it's all. We even have an oversight committee. I know we have some people in here that serve on the oversight committee, but we cannot use that money for anything other than what is in the bond language that was passed on that actual the ballot language.
I have a question. The $500,000 you got a grant on doing the sidewalks. What happened to that money?
I'm not sure what you're
repair the sidewalks. A couple years ago, 4 years ago, I think Maxwell knows, right, Maxwell?
No, he left. He's gone.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
They had surveyors. They came out. They had Ocean Breeze, in that area, that part of it, Bryant Park area. They surveyed all the sidewalks. They painted everything to replace. It never happened. And they had $500,000 from the state to repair the sidewalks.
Okay, this has nothing to do with what we're here for.
I'm just saying.
I don't care what you're just saying.
I'm just saying that Lake Worth throws the money around everywhere except where it goes.
Yeah, I'd have to figure out what that is, because I've been here since July of 11, and I'm not sure what the $500,000, but it would not have been money from the state, because the only FDOT roads we have are Lake Lucerne, Federal, and Dixie. The state's not going to give us any money to do anything on our neighborhood roadways. Now we do have CDBG funds, the Community Development Block Grant funds we get from the county, but that would not have been used for sidewalk work and stuff.
Now I have another question. On the roads, some of the roads you're going to fix, you have your typical 40-foot right-of-way and 60-foot. I specifically curious about my block, 11th Avenue South, between M and N. Are you going to take, I don't know if you plan on doing anything on that part of the road. I heard you mention 11th Avenue South, but I didn't know which part you were working on.
It's between Federal and Palm Way is the one on here now, and then M and N is not on the year one.
Is it on any of the years?
Let's see.
It's okay if it's not. There really isn't anything wrong with it.
No, it's not on any of the years.
Oh, well then never mind. It doesn't matter. I don't have to worry about you guys taking half my front yard and all that stuff. So, as much as I would have liked a nice F-curb and water to drain not into my front yard, that's fine. Leave it alone. I'll worry about it.
Now, real quick, you guys had mentioned we talked about the budget. When I started here, we were getting about $200,000 a year in our roadway department.
You can't even fix a city block with that.
For our, 7 square miles, a city of this size and what we actually have, that budget should really be more around 1.5 million. And what we're doing is, we started last year, each year we're getting more money added in from the general fund into that account. So by 2021, we will actually have the exact amount that we need to actually do proper maintenance. And what we've done also in the past couple of years is, before, there was no maintenance schedule. There was no anything. We were understaffed. We didn't have enough money. And there wasn't enough money to really outsource to someone to come in to take care of a lot of stuff, because our entire infrastructure was just shot.
Yeah.
So we were kind of in that weird thing where we're just all reactive, nothing proactive. People are calling, you have some potholes, you run out, the cheap.
The bad. Yeah, you have to do. You have to do.
What you have to do,
Yeah.
just to fill it up so people aren't completely ruining their vehicles. But you're kind of in that weird thing. So what we're doing now, we're in fix mode. So
I just get
us
worried. We're going to fix the roads, and I know we talked about it earlier, and I know I keep bringing it up, but it's one of the main problems is the sewer lines and utilities leaking underneath. And I'm not totally sold on putting a little rubber sleeve through a clay pipe and it's supposed to fix it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't tear every road up at one time because it does cost lots of
Well,
money.
as Brendan mentioned before, like the slip line and everything, like that's what all municipalities
Yeah.
do. If the pipe is in not crumbling, like we mentioned before, and it's just a matter of some leaking, yeah, everyone's slipping.
I'm just wondering if it's leaking and it's washed out and the pipe's kind of sitting like this a little bit, and then let's say you mill and overlay it, well, it's still at an angle, it's still going to give and bounce at some point. I would think it would break again, but
That's
I
why,
don't.
as Brendan mentioned, that's why you TV all the lines
Yeah.
to make sure that you can see exactly if anything is sagging, if anything is leaking. You TV everything, and obviously every line is not going to be a good candidate.
Yeah, and
to
they're all
slip
going to be
line.
different, yeah.
But where you can slip on, you want to do that because it's going to be a lot cheaper than
Yeah.
doing an open cut and pulling everything out and redoing it again.
Yeah, I mean, to the staff's credit, they took the pavement information and then they took the 5-year plan from the utilities department for water and sewer, and then overlaid the two and made sure that, hey, we don't fix in street on a block that you're going to come back to
And tear it back up. Yeah.
Which they did all the time before.
Which was
Yeah.
not an infrequent occurrence. And one thing that you'll see, I noticed this when we're out there walking the streets, you'll get that open cut, and they'll do what looks like the proper pavement repair, where they saw cut the edges, they put
But they
down
never compact
hot
the
mix.
bottom.
They didn't compact it, so
No.
you get this dishing effect, and you can just see it. When you come back to it a year later, it's like a little dip in the pavement. So in those locations, we're making sure the contractor's going to put in some more lime rock and rework that so that you get a consistent, homogeneous material that you're putting the pavement on when you come back and fix it. So we're trying to catch that. Yeah.
I just looked on our map. We live on Lakeside Palm Court, and there's a berm at the end of our street. Our street is in pretty good shape, but the berm at the end of the street, that's so the water doesn't run in. But the water that whenever we get a big rain, it floods because our drain pipes don't connect to anything. We found out last year because we had with a Zika virus. We were having mosquitoes breeding in the drains because the water never drained. You know why? Because they don't go anywhere. The drains are just French drains, and of course they're buried below the water level.
Right.
And so there's water in there all the time.
And don't forget vegetation, you get
And
palm
there
trees
was
growing
a
in.
palm tree.
Yeah, sometimes you look in an inlet, you see a tree under the grate. Yeah.
Well, the people came out and cleaned it, but it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
Because of the berm on the end, so the water doesn't run into the street. It
I'm
doesn't
not
allow
sure I
water
know where
to run
you're saying
out.
Lakeside.
Yeah, and if this is
Lakeside Palm
happening,
Court.
this is happening in our, I'm
Where's
sure
that
somebody
at?
else is. So we're down here
It goes into the drain.
Lakeside and
No, we don't
yes.
stay over my court.
Okay, there's
Right here, but it's right in there.
there's no rhyme or reason for a lot of the things that are the way that they are in the city, as we found.
That's all.
Yeah, it should be corrected. So that's why we're having these meetings so people can
This,
have
I
recommendations
think
like
they look
that.
too much under.
It's right in here, right? That's where you're at?
This little bit of it, but it's not.
Right. So this
Well,
green...
wait, no, I'm sorry, right here. See where this, that's that turn right
Okay.
here. That's,
Right,
that's
okay.
it.
I know where
That's
you're
a
talking
cul-de-sac.
It's pavers then on that cul-de-sac.
No,
No,
that's the
no.
I'm thinking of,
You're
okay.
thinking of the gated one.
The
Okay.
gated one's over here.
We're down here, and then what it is that everything that comes in, everything that runs in from both sides ends up on here in the grates, and you can see it on both sides of the road, just piling up. There's no place for it to
I
go.
know that Felipe was telling me about, I think there's a collapsed drainage line
Right,
in there.
there is, that's what we
15.
heard, but that's
And no, I understand. we took to the city 5 years ago or so, had CDM do stuff.
2010, because I came in as they were finishing up.
Okay,
Stormwater
2010,
master plan.
they had this stormwater master plan where they looked at the whole city and figured out where their drainage problems. So when we started this project, we pulled that report, looked at what they found, and now we're digging into the cases where we need drainage, where there are drainage problems. This specifically being a big one, and we're going to figure out what's the best way to fix this, and why it's shown as a year 3 project is more than likely 15 is going to get completely dug up. We're going to look at Lakeside, Inn, and a lot of other locations around here, really get an understanding of what the drainage is and how we can fix this and resolve it.
You can tie it into 18th Avenue.
That's on the
18th
list.
Avenue goes right into the intercoastal drainage.
Okay.
Really? Think about Chimney
Yeah, you got to be
Island.
careful
Excellent.
with that because then you're going to have we
Too much
have
flow.
that lake and Lakeside and
You can drain a wattage pipe.
Is it
into
the-
18th Avenue.
I know they had mentioned
Pipes
also
already in
a
there.
concern with just general
tide's been going up.
the
The
volume
entire
of water
area.
that comes from, I guess, west of the train tracks across through the underground drainage system. There should be more upstream facilities. So one of the things that I know that report had recommended, which we haven't decided if we're going to implement what they recommended or a different fix, is putting some French drains up here to kind of catch the water before it starts. So you're kind of holding back some of what's showing up in the District 4 neighborhood. We're going to be playing with some ideas, but really this first year is about repaving some of the streets where the city has TV lines and felt pretty confident in what the drainage facilities look like. And the places where we know there's a drainage problem, we push that back to one of the year 3 or year 4.
Are you doing that
to do the
because
work.
it's like placating the township by making it aesthetically nicer? Is that what is being done for? Because to me, with things like Zika virus, you want to be able to fix things.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I think the idea was
Collapsing pipes.
we don't want to get approval from the city to take out a $40 million bond and then sit on the money and wait till a later date to start spending it on construction. So we were told explicitly, you're going to find some projects to start getting trucks on the streets and doing construction work so we can start spending this money and not borrow it and start paying interest on it before we're actually using it on construction. And so this set of blue lines is, we were directed by the city, by the beginning of July, we want to be looking at construction plans that we can go out and start building. Spending that money. They want to make sure that in that 4 years, that $40 million gets spent on construction projects. If something needs a full reconstruction and a further detailed look, let's do that in the second round. The first round, let's get out here and start doing work that we know we can do.
I have a question. When you redo the first coat, are you redoing also the concrete gutters in the sidewalk?
Yes. So because we're really trying to make sure we're able to stretch the dollar as far as we can, we're not going to redo curb and gutter and sidewalk where we think that it meets the city standard.
Yeah,
but in cases like I was describing, we were out with Felipe, who works with Jamie on K Street, and it really looks like everything. Sidewalk, curb and gutter, everything. In other locations, we were down on M Street. There's a segment where everything has to go. There's another segment where the curb and gutter looks good, the sidewalk is cracked. We'll replace that segment of sidewalk, and then we kind of work through it as we go. So we try to save features that we can keep, because you can spend a lot of the budget on just fixing that curb and gutter and sidewalk. And also, when you start tearing up the curb and gutter and sidewalk, you have to start worrying about where the interface is with that person's home. Maybe they have a retaining wall at the front, maybe they have some other hedge or feature. Then you might end up spending some money making fixes there. So we're trying to really be surgical about how we approach it. But notwithstanding the directive from the city, if it doesn't look like this, we want to do something to fix it. And so that's where we're trying. Anything that we can you know, in cases where there's a type F curve, but it's got that crappy thin layer of microsurfacing on top of it, we're calling out for the contractor to grind that off or chip that off or break that off. If they find, our representative in the field finds that the concrete below it is in poor condition and is not salvageable, then that'll be a replace in the field. We'll have a line item price for it, and we'll go ahead and do that repair.
I have another question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Are you able to have an amount of street paved in comparison with other city? After you've done your project and you have 14 million, you can say, you know, I've covered that many of miles of street, which maybe the city of Delray is the average of that, and other cities.
So Jamie has a directive to do all the streets on this bond, on this map. It's written into the language of the bond that was signed off by the commission, and that's in the vicinity, I think it's around 30 miles or so. Of the
it was like right on 34 and a half, something like
34
that.
and a half.
Basically a third of the...
Is this reasonable, or is
So,
this the average? Or?
Well, I mean, I think I'd love to see a lot more of that paved.
Yeah.
But
my sister's in rural county, then you know their tax money is not that much, but they can cover miles and miles of country road. You know?
Right.
Because are we able to do the same thing?
So I mean, I think it's a lot of competing interests in the city. 34 and a half miles of road that are going to be paved, that are currently paved, that need repair.
Yeah.
Now, there's a bunch of miles of road, as you guys all know, that aren't paved right now, and that this program is not paving. Now, there are options for them with general fund money that maybe they can address. There's been locations in the District 1 where they've done some paving of unpaved rights of way, and then they've also done a lot of these programs with greenways, walkways, and things to replace that. You know, the $40 million bond, there was a $60 million bond that voters didn't approve that had a lot of things on it, not just this, but other things in the city that were going to be facilities, whatever. I think the city made the right decision. They said, let's be really clear. It's $40 million for roads and sidewalks. That's it, you know? So 34 and a half miles of streets in the city are going to get some kind of road repair. In some cases, it's going to be like K and J, rip it all the way up and completely replace it. And some